years ago remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Tonight, as I boarded that same flight, the sense of déjà vu was overwhelming. The aircraft, which vanished without a trace, was presumed lost forever. But here I am, retracing the steps of my father and brother who disappeared on this very plane. It was meant to be a routine business trip for them, and the finality of their departure hit me with an unexpected intensity. As I settled into my seat, memories of waving goodbye at the airport resurfaced, a stark reminder of the haunting void left in my life. Every detail of the departure seemed frozen in time. The same gate, the same boarding announcement, and even the same flight number, 237, which had become synonymous with uncertainty and loss. I remembered the promise my father made to return soon, a promise that had never been kept. The terminal was bustling with travelers, oblivious to the deep personal tragedy that was about to unfold. The contrast between the lively airport and the somber reality of the missing flight was jarring. I glanced around, trying to find some comfort in the familiar surroundings, but everything felt hollow and disconnected. As the boarding process began, I couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu, as if the past and present were intertwining in a way I couldn't fully grasp. I overheard snippets of conversations about Flight 237, rumors and speculations that seemed to blur the lines between reality and myth. The excitement of the travelers around me felt surreal, like a cruel joke against the backdrop of the mystery I was about to relive. I wondered if anyone else on this flight was aware of the dark history it carried, or if they too were oblivious to the gravity of what had happened. Sitting in my seat, I took a deep breath and looked out the window. The runway lights streaked by, and for a moment, I felt a fleeting connection to my father and brother. It was as if their spirits were still here, trying to communicate through the echo of the past. The plane began its taxiing, and the roar of the engines grew louder. With each passing second, I was drawn further into the enigma of Flight 237, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. What truths would this flight reveal? And would it finally bring closure to the mystery that had haunted my family for 2 decades? Really unchanged. The same layout, the same seats, the same overhead compartments. It was as if time had stood still for 2 decades. Each step I took down the aisle echoed with the ghosts of those who had once occupied these spaces. I remembered the faces of my father and brother, their smiles full of anticipation for their journey. But as I took my seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, a lingering sense of foreboding that seemed to envelop the entire cabin. As I settled into my seat, I noticed subtle details that seemed oddly familiar. The same patterned upholstery, the same small, worn-out safety cards in the seat pockets. It was as though the plane had been frozen in time, a snapshot of the past preserved in every corner. The flight attendants moved through the cabin with a practiced grace that felt almost too smooth, their smiles a little too perfect. I wondered if they were aware of the flight's dark history, or if they were simply actors in a scene replaying itself. The overhead compartments above me had the same scratches and dents, the same faint smell of old leather. Looking around, I saw empty seats that once held my father and brother. It was surreal to think that these exact spots had been occupied by them on that fateful flight. The sense of déjà vu was overpowering, and I could almost hear their voices and laughter from years ago, blending with the hum of the plane. The illusion of normalcy was shattered by the weight of what this flight represented. I couldn't help but compare this flight to the stories I had heard. Some said the plane had been caught in a temporal anomaly. Others speculated it had vanished into another realm. I tried to focus on the present, but the past clung to every corner of the cabin. The uniformity and repetition of the surroundings felt like a cruel reminder of the unresolved mystery. As the plane continued its journey, I found myself wondering if the cabin itself was a vessel for the secrets of the past, holding on to the memories and truths of those who had once been here. but the past kept creeping in. The flight attendants moved through the aisles with practiced ease, just as they had 2 decades ago. Yet, their presence did little to reassure me. My thoughts kept drifting back to the stories and rumors surrounding Flight 237's disappearance. Some said it had been swallowed by a time warp. Others speculated about a bizarre accident. I looked around, half expecting to see a clue or a sign that would make sense of this strange journey I was on. The cabin lights dimmed, and I could only hope that the answers I sought would reveal themselves before the flight was over. The engines roared with an intensity that seemed almost otherworldly, and the plane ascended into the night sky. I watched the city lights below shrink into a blur, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. The flight attendants' routine movements were meticulously timed, but they seemed almost mechanical, as if they were part of an elaborate play rather than real people. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were traversing more than just physical space. We were crossing into a realm that defied understanding. My mind raced through the various theories about Flight 237's fate. Some had suggested that the plane might have been caught in a spatial anomaly, while others spoke of mysterious forces at play. The more I thought about these theories, the more I felt that this flight was a key to unlocking the truth. The stories I had heard seemed to converge on the idea that something extraordinary had happened, and being on this plane felt like stepping into a piece of that unresolved puzzle. As I glanced around the cabin, I noticed subtle changes, distortions in the air, the faint flicker of the lights. It was as if the plane itself was reacting to the gravity of its history. The sense of anticipation was palpable, and every moment seemed to stretch out, filled with unspoken questions. I realized that this journey was not just about finding answers, but about understanding the true nature of what had occurred on that fateful flight. The deeper we flew into the night, the more the boundaries between reality and speculation began to blur. An inexplicable mix of fear and fascination. The flight seemed to be defying the laws of nature, almost as if we were caught in a parallel dimension. The familiar hum of the engines felt distorted, and the air around me seemed heavier. My heart raced as I glanced at the empty seats beside me, imagining my father and brother sitting there. What had happened to them? Were they trapped in some sort of limbo? The unanswered questions weighed heavily on me, and I realized that this flight was more than just a physical journey. It was a voyage into the unknown. The sensation grew stronger with each passing moment. The plane's interior seemed to warp subtly, the edges of the seats and windows blurring as if the fabric of reality itself was fraying. I could almost feel an otherworldly force at play, manipulating the environment in ways that defied logical explanation. The normal rhythm of the flight was disrupted, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to amplify the beating of my own heart. The atmosphere grew increasingly surreal, and the boundaries between the past and present seemed to dissolve. I could hear whispers of voices from long ago, faint echoes that mingled with the hum of the engines. The cabin lights flickered sporadically, casting strange shadows that danced along the walls. It was as if the plane was a vessel not just for passengers, but for the memories and secrets of its ill-fated journey. I looked around, half expecting to see something that would make sense of this bizarre experience. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. I was part of a living enigma, a first-hand witness to the unexplained phenomenon of Flight 237. My father and brother's fate felt closer than ever, yet still just out of reach. The flight was becoming a journey into a deeper mystery, and I braced myself for the revelations that might come as we continued to soar through the night.